Welcome to Window Dressing, American Trash and National Treasures. I'm Madeline Jane Auble, and this is Jessica Fletcher, Part 2. In my last episode, Jessica Fletcher and Playboy Part 1, I did an introductory look into Murder, She Wrote, focusing on one episode in particular. Christopher Bundy died on Sunday. The Playboy-inspired motif and the political implications took center stage. This time, I approached the series like a smorgasbord from which I will cherry-pick a smattering of episodes and scenes to give a more holistic sense of the series. I recommend listening to Part 1 before listening to Part 2 for context about Angela Lansbury, her character Jessica Fletcher, and the show. But briefly, Murder, She Wrote had a 12-season run from 1984 to 1996. Angela Lansbury plays widowed mystery writer and citizen detective Jessica Fletcher. It was one of the most successful shows of all time, which is a huge feat considering the protagonist was a woman over 50 who didn't have any love interest. The show competed with male-driven action series like Magnum P.I., which had a Murder, She Wrote crossover episode in Season 7 of Magnum and Season 3 of Murder, She Wrote. I talk about these two episodes this week. One of my favorite components of Murder, She Wrote is the costume design and the set decoration. Several of the episodes this week will be heavily draped and baubled with talk of floral prints and shower bouquets. There are way too many set decorators and costume designers who worked on the show to name here. But I will be calling out the details in the series that I have carried with me in my own home and wardrobe as reminders to be more like Jessica. Namely, to rely less on a man and more on ruffled duvet covers, teapots, throw pillows, and needlepoint rugs. Some of my favorite memories as a child are Murder, She Wrote plotlines. I suspect my love of film noir was initially seeded by this show. There was a recent episode of Noir Alley on Turner Classic Movies with San Francisco noir guy turned TV host Eddie Muller, who stated that Murder, She Wrote single-handedly kept B-movie and noir actors employed in the 1980s and 1990s. In that preamble, he was introducing the film Strange Bargain, a 1949 film noir that has a sequel episode called The Days Dwindle Down on Season 3 of Murder, She Wrote. The episode features the film's original cast 40 years later. Murder, She Wrote is a mainstay of American television and a gateway to classic film. The black and white Season 5 Episode 16 noir spoof, Truck Stop, pulls from every noir in Hollywoodland. It's got the insurance angle of Double Indemnity, the posthumous confession of DOA, the daughter who was disgusted with her waitress mother of Mildred Pierce, the stranded girl at a diner of Fallen Angel, and the husband murder plot specific to a roadside diner of The Postman Always Rings Twice. It even has the dandified poet part played by Leslie Howard in Petrified Forest. The cast of this episode is pretty spectacular. It features Elizabeth Ashley in one of her best soap meets grit performances. Ashley is most known for her stage performances in Tennessee Williams plays, specifically her portrayal of Maggie the Cat in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. Mike Connors also graces the small screen in this episode. He was in several noirs during his day, including the 1958 film Live Fast, Die Young. He was best known for his film noir-inspired role as Joe Mannix in the CBS show Mannix, that aired from 1967 to 1975. Truck Stop takes place in a town like Barstow or Needles, between Las Vegas and Los Angeles, at a roadside diner/motel called Pete's. Jessica and her companion, Walter, played by Mike Connors, a screenwriter set to adapt one of her novels, are traveling from Las Vegas to Los Angeles by car instead of flying at the insistence of Walter. The pit stop at the diner seems suspiciously planned out, but Walter plays it like happenstance. The place is owned by Pete, played by Ron Karabastos, and his world-weary waitress wife, Vera, played by Elizabeth Ashley. When Walter and Vera lock eyes, it's clear they were once lovers. When Pete winds up dead and Walter is blamed for his death in part because of a posthumous confession tape after he too dies, Jessica is left to solve the crime with very little help from the bumbling sheriff, Sheriff Tubman, played by Ken Swafford. Pete and Vera's daughter Flora, played by Jill Sholin, is set to inherit the money from an insurance policy clearly taken out by Vera. Flora, unaware of the money, wants out of this small-time life in this small-time town that turned her mom into a quote-unquote cheap waitress and a cheap tramp. She thinks her best escape route is with Grange, a motorcycle-riding bad boy played by Isaac Turner. But when Walter shows up in town with Jessica Fletcher, Flora tries her hand at playing companion to him in an effort to get out. But post Pete and Walter's death, it comes out that Walter is Flora's real father, leaving her without a dad and soon to be without a mom too. Vera gets busted for murdering her good-for-nothing husband, Pete, in a plot for insurance money and a way out for herself. Flora's good-for-nothing boyfriend, Grange, abandons her too, and she hitches a ride to L.A. with who else? Jessica Fletcher. Flora comes to Walter's motel room after her boyfriend is arrested for murdering her dad, Pete. She doesn't yet know that Walter is her real father. She is there to seduce him into giving her a ride out of town and into L.A. She is wearing her usual t-shirt and jeans, but with an added pair of dangly rhinestone earrings and an uncharacteristic smile in order to better serve her purpose. Walter, who does know that he is her father now, doesn't fall for his daughter's sexual advances. He says she should stick around town with her mother, and maybe he will too. Flora says, "Look, I'm packed up and ready to roll. If you're not going to help me, I'm just going to find another way out." Flora may be wearing jeans and awful earrings, but she knows how to get free. Her mother Vera comes out of the bathroom where she has been hiding the whole time. She begs Flora not to leave town. Flora says to her mom, "I always knew you were a cheap waitress. I just should have figured you for a cheap tramp, too. I mean, I had to get it somewhere." Vera says, "You're not a tramp." Flora says, "Sure I am." She continues to describe how much she hates her mother, but ends with this sticking point. She says, "I hate the way you got yourself stuck at this truck stop." Flora has internalized her lack of options and by extension her mother's. That is where the label tramp comes in. The world has labeled using what you've got to get out as being a tramp because men want to keep women stuck. In a world that uses and abuses women for sport, both mother and daughter are forced to swallow the responsibility of that abuse by labeling them dirty for participating when it benefits them. Flora is embarrassed at her blatant seduction attempts and angry to find out her mom was doing a similar dance with Walter. She resents that her mother was dumb enough to get herself stuck, but let's be real, the only way Vera could have gotten herself free was to run just as Flora is trying to do. That isn't Vera's fault, but it is her burden and now it is her daughter's too. In the second-to-last scene, Vera is caught by Jessica and the local sheriff trying to burn a letter that connects her and Walter and proves she killed her husband, Pete. Jessica is dressed in a gray pantsuit and a silk oversized checkered blouse with a giant bow tie at her neck. She wears cream, square enamel earrings trimmed in gold with coral lipstick and heavily lined and shadowed eyes. She lays out the details in the style of Perry Mason while patiently allowing space for Vera to tell her tale without judgment. Vera, whose exhaustion was made more evident by her blue waitress uniform worn with gaudy matching blue dangling earrings, confesses. She attacked her husband with a tire iron and then crushed his body with his car. She sits on the rough-looking wool sofa and talks about her plan to get Pete's insurance money and run away with the father of her now teenage daughter, Flora, Walter. She had tricked Pete into marrying her before she was showing. Walter had never known of his child. When pushed about her motives by the sheriff, Vera says, "Pete owed me for those 19 years of marriage, and $250,000 doesn't even begin to cover it." Pete's insurance policy named Flora as the beneficiary, not Vera. While Vera is being taken away by the sheriff, Jessica and the insurance salesman prepare to leave for Los Angeles. Flora walks up to watch her mom drive away for the last time, wearing a tight black skirt and plain white blouse with a denim button-up over it, looking like a cross between Brenda on 90210 and Shelley on Twin Peaks. Jessica puts her arm around Flora and asks, "Do you still want that ride?" Flora nods yes, and they turn to get into the waiting car. Flora gets help, but she doesn't have to do it through dangerous and unreliable men like her mom did. Jessica offers Flora an alternative way out, one that isn't hinged on her deadbeat boyfriend or either of her dead dads. She doesn't have to sweet-talk the slimy sheriff or take her chances with a long-haul trucker, who incidentally have an unusually high rate of serial killers among their ranks. She is offered a ride by the world-wise but never judgmental Jessica Fletcher. This protection and care provide Flora with a chance Flora's mother, Vera, never got. I was a runaway. I left home at age 14 on a Greyhound bus with $50 in my pocket. I didn't have a Jessica, but I ran into plenty of deadbeat boyfriends along the way. I will tell you right now that generally, men should not be relied upon. Unless, of course, that man is Grady Fletcher, played by Michael Horton, Jessica's kind and jovial nephew and future husband of Donna Mayberry, played by Debbie Zipp. Michael and Debbie are married in real life, to this day. In Season 5, Episode 9, entitled Something Borrowed, Someone Blue, Grady and Donna are getting married on the show at her parents' palatial estate in what is supposed to be upstate New York, but feels more like Beverly Hills, but is actually filmed in Pasadena, the old money part of the greater Los Angeles area. The cook is murdered during the rehearsal dinner and then hidden away from wedding guests' prying eyes, while an investigation that includes Jessica as an aide to local law enforcement ensues. The couple fight to get married during all of the hubbub and disaster. The feeling is a cross between Clue, which came out 3 years before this episode, and Scenes from the Class Struggles in Beverly Hills, which came out a few months after this episode in the spring of 1989. Eventually, the murderess is caught. She turned out to be the sister-in-law of the mother of the bride, a Southern belle who murdered her former husband and realized that the cook was privy to her old identity. Jessica arrives at Donna's parents' house for the wedding rehearsal with a gift in hand. She is led to the gift table by Donna and Grady. Donna is dressed in a high-waisted, khaki slacks with flat front pleats and a thin taupe belt and gold buckle. Her blouse is white cotton with an eyelet pattern, high neck and scalloped hem. She wears a small gold cameo necklace over her blouse. Her hair is soft, feathered, and frosted blonde. Her eyes are shadowed in the creases a la an upper crust Garbo. She wears all-American girl doll pink on her cheeks and lips. Donna holds Jessica's gift tightly with that signature Debbie Zipp expressive face and says, "I can't wait." Jessica says, "I won't tell if you don't." Donna opens the present. Inside the carefully hand-wrapped box is a silver hand mirror, the kind that graces the vanity table of a lady. Grady says, "Gee, Aunt Jess, that was the mirror that your mom gave you when you got married." Jessica says, "It brought great good luck to Frank and me." Jessica gives Donna a gift specifically for her that had been passed down to Jessica by her own mother, and not a gift to Grady or the couple. This direct symbol of female power, a mirror, which has its symbolic roots in witchcraft, where it is used as a divination tool, is a powerful totem of female lineage. Jessica is essentially swapping blood with her newfound niece, opening the book, sharing the secrets, and talking amongst themselves the way women have done for centuries. The great good luck it brought her and Frank in their marriage is the only part of the message that Grady needed to understand. But what was really being passed to his bride-to-be was practical magic and an acknowledgement of Donna's power source. I understand that there is an argument to be made that giving a woman a mirror as a wedding gift perpetuates sexist expectations of beauty. The implications being it must be maintained for the health of the marriage. While there is no escaping the long-clawed arm of beauty standards, there is also meaning to a literal tool of magic that is not about attracting a man or maintaining the patriarchy, but reflecting Donna's own power. In the last scene of the episode, Grady and Donna are finally standing face to face at the altar. Donna typically looks like Laura Palmer in Laura Ashley, but today she is dressed in the most amazing late 1980s white long-sleeve gown with netting at her décolletage and long mutton sleeves with massive poofed shoulders, a la Adrian's design for Joan Crawford in MGM's 1932 production of Letty Linton. Her hair is frosted blonde and pulled back in a Gibson Girl-esque updo adorned with rhinestone clips at her temples and a giant pearl-encrusted veil. The flowers for the wedding, like the dress, are 1930s inspired, shower arrangements, which had a renaissance in the 1980s. Shower arrangements are a type of floral design that is larger than most and almost pours out in an extravagant fan or flute shape. My first encounter with these spectacular arrangements was in Emily Post's Big Blue Etiquette book. Jessica sits in the audience near Donna's mother, wearing a red skirt suit and pink silk cowl neck blouse with a small gold brooch over her heart. She looks wide-eyed up at the sky as if to thank God that this couple is finally getting married after the murder and mayhem of the day. The cook's untimely death does not mar the occasion. Donna's hyper-expressive face and drop-dead gorgeous gown make murder look like child's play. This is an example of when dress and decor win the day. The deeply rooted design of Donna's dress and flower arrangements in traditional Americana is a hallmark of the decade's grappling with change. It also works to ground Donna in her new role as wife to Grady and daughter-in-law to Jessica. She is going through what Jessica did when she married her now-deceased husband, Frank. Donna is starting a new life, not as a daughter, but as a wife. We could talk all day about women being traded as property, but the inherent femaleness of the traditions involved in wedding ceremonies throughout generations is what catches my eye in this episode. Now, as promised, the two-part Murder, She Wrote / Magnum P.I. crossover episodes. First, some background on Magnum. Tom Selleck plays Thomas Magnum, a Vietnam vet, layabout private investigator who has finagled his way into a job and a place to live at Robin Masters' estate in Hawaii. Masters is a famous author whose world traveling keeps him off the show entirely. Magnum lives in the guest house but shares the grounds with Higgins, Masters' estate butler and all-around stuffy English gentleman. Magnum and Higgins form an unlikely friendship, laced with constant rivalry. Magnum has two close friends on the island that he was in Vietnam with. The first is T.C., a helicopter pilot who now does island hopping tours, and Rick, who owns a nightclub and has some seedy dealings as part of the job. His name and his occupation are a perpetual nod to Casablanca. The crossover event begins in 1986 on Magnum, Season 7, Episode 9, called Novel Connection, and ends on Murder, She Wrote, Season 3, Episode 8, called Magnum on Ice. I'm going to summarize both episodes to the best of my ability, but be forewarned there are a lot of extraneous pieces. Three women come to Robin Masters' estate for a visit. A recent widow, Joan Fulton, played by the fantastic Jessica Walter, Joan's assistant, Amy, played by Stephanie Farassay, and publisher and mutual friend of both Jessica Fletcher and Robin Masters, Pamela Bates, played by Dorothy Loudon. The women are almost run off the road on their way home from the airport, prompting a frenzied Pamela to call her old friend Jessica to come and help. Magnum, Thomas, finds out that a rival investigator is coming to work on the case and is driven by jealousy and his signature care for beautiful women to follow Amy when she goes out alone. This is one of the only Magnum episodes I have seen where he doesn't have a love affair with his client, or at least a yearning to do so. It's fascinating the way the writers played it. When Jessica arrives, it is Higgins that has a crush on her. She is unaware and immune to the affection, but somehow, with the tables turned, Magnum is forced to act as a professional and not a romantic in this one episode. The Magnum episode ends at an island cocktail party where a known hitman takes a shot at Magnum. He defends himself. The man ends up dead and Magnum is arrested. It is still unclear who the hit was intended for. Everyone, including Higgins, who in some lame attempt to impress Jessica with his wild past, thinks the shot was intended for them. We find out that Amy took the job as Joan's assistant to get away from her abusive husband. He shows up on the island prompted by a phone call from Pamela alerting him to her location. He comes looking for Amy and her jewels, a side story that is the red herring of the piece. There is also something about embezzlement back in New York at the publishing house involving Pamela that makes her think someone is after her. In the end, the killer is the savvy businesswoman and all-around babe, Joan Fulton. When her husband died, she took sole ownership of the business. What the business is, I don't know, but it was her baby, for lack of a less sexist comparison. She wouldn't sell to her rival, and he, thinking it would be easier to purchase the business from Joan's estate as opposed to her, hired a hitman. When Joan got hip to the hit, she, instead of calling the police, killed him. Also, it turns out that Amy's jewels were her grandmother's, just as she had said they were. Jessica returns to Cabot Cove, having earned the respect and admiration of Magnum. But more importantly, there's a friendship that has struck up between the two that feels very sweet and an example of her uncanny ability to cross divides by simply showing up as her full self. The first scene I'm going to talk about is from the Magnum episode Novel Connections. The rest of the scene breakdowns are from the Murder, She Wrote episode Magnum on Ice. Shortly after Jessica's arrival on the island and at Robin Masters' estate, the group, excepting Joan, sit down to eat lunch on the lanai. Higgins sits Magnum at the literal kiddie table out of spite and to preserve the table setting, which was not initially planned for Magnum's presence. Jessica is wearing a cream skirt suit with a dark green blouse and a pearl-like necklace made of an ivory-adjacent material with matching square earrings. She says to Magnum, "About Pamela's problem, could you conduct an investigation?" Pamela's problem being that someone is trying to kill one or all of them. Magnum says, "With all due respect, Mrs. Fletcher, isn't that what you're supposed to do?" Jessica responds, "With a private investigator available, why would you need me?" Pamela cuts in and asks Magnum what lead he thinks he has. Playing dumb like a man-child, Magnum says, "Lead? Did I say that?" Jessica kid-gloves Magnum by standing up for him in this moment of clearly childish behavior. She says that Magnum must have a reason for keeping things close to the vest, but she is glad he is on the case. Magnum says, "I'm not on the case." Jessica redirects her attention to Amy's jewels. She compliments her gorgeous diamond ring. Amy says, "I wish it were real." Well, clearly, those diamonds are real, and although they act as the red herring of this storyline, I find myself wanting to accompany Amy to the pawn shop for a cut of the sale of that wedding ring. Joan walks into the lanai wearing a black bathing suit a la Lana Del Rey and matching wrap in a taffeta-esque ombre bat-wing sleeve with shoulder pads. She is accompanied by a red-faced rich man who invites them all to a cocktail party at his coastal mansion later that evening. Pamela fusses over Joan, expressing her grave concern and worry. Joan says, "I'm 39. I don't need a babysitter." I love her delivery of this line. Who knows how old this hot piece is, but it's not 39, and she most definitely doesn't need a babysitter or some dumb bitch keeping tabs on her movements or her men. Pamela agrees to hire Magnum as muscle or mop-up to aid in Jessica's real sleuthing. Magnum throws a hissy fit in response to that phrasing. He spills a bottle of wine and then spots a silencer peeking through the window. He prevents the group from being hit by shots fired in the lanai. They all go to the cocktail party later, and the hitman gets shot poolside. He is just the first to die. Later, it will be Arthur Houston, the man who hired the hitman. After Houston is found dead alongside Magnum's baseball cap, Magnum goes to talk to Jessica at the Royal Hawaiian Hotel. The group has relocated there out of safety concerns that mostly stem from Higgins' delusional belief that the hired gun was after him, not one of the ladies. When Magnum arrives, he lets himself into Jess's room when she doesn't answer the door. She couldn't hear him because she is running a bath, wearing the most on-brand for Jessica on vacation robe. It is peach silk patterned with bamboo shoots and trimmed in bubblegum pink. Everything about the decor in the hotel reflects and complements her robe, right down to the sheen on the wallpaper. Magnum is wearing tight, light denim jeans, a thin belt, and a borderline work shirt in a very pale blue cotton. Jessica runs out of the bathroom frantically, not knowing who just broke into her room. She calms down after Magnum compliments her robe. She sees the silliness in the situation and laughs. Magnum says, "I read your book. I like the way your mind works." This moment is a big deal. Up to this point in the crossover extravaganza, Magnum has treated Jessica as an inferior, a schlock writer with little to no investigative skills. He himself has been treated like a schlock investigator by Pamela and Higgins, but never by Jessica. She went out of her way to take him seriously, so for him to have put in the effort in return is a very sweet thing. Sometimes it takes men a little longer, or in the case of a man-child like Magnum, a lot longer. The two discuss the baseball cap found alongside Houston's body. Specifically, who knew it was Magnum's and who had the opportunity to set him up for the murder. They realize it could have been anyone, including the women they are trying to protect. Magnum asks Jessica to back off. Well, he asks her if there is anything he could do to convince her to back off. She answers with a definitive no and says, "I can't just sit by while one of these ladies may still be in danger." Jessica is the protector of women, even as a guest on a show where Magnum's whole identity is protecting women. Later, Jessica breaks into Joan's room at the hotel under the ruse of needing an aspirin. She suspects Joan of the murder and is searching for the gun and silencer she believes Joan has. Jess is wearing a tropical print purple resort wear style dress with a double strand of pearls and large white round earrings. She tops the tip of her toes off with white slingback kitten heels with an open toe. Joan walks into her room and catches Jessica in the act. Joan is wearing a little black dress, black sheer tights, and large, chunky black jewelry with diamond inlay. She is carrying a small black clutch, where the gun and silencer are tucked away. In classic detective fashion, Jessica goes through the details of the crime, Joan's motivations, and the convenience of making Magnum the fall guy. This whole mess was about Joan's company. The one she built, her husband took credit for, and then upon his death, everyone tried to buy out from under her. Joan says, "I told Houston that I didn't want to sell. He thought I was negotiating, and then the subtle threats. I came here to settle it once and for all, and then that car ran us off the road." Joan's no means no speech is all said while she looks out the window, the sunset reflecting back at her. Perhaps if more men took no for an answer, there would be fewer dead ones. Joan says, "Houston had put out a contract on me. If I didn't sell, he would buy from my executors." Jessica says, "You must have been frantic." Joan laughs. "Frantic? I was angry, really angry. I realized there is only one way to deal with a man like that." Joan goes on to deliver other great truisms about womanhood, including, "Men always underestimate me," and of her role as a murderess, "Call it self-preservation." She pulls her gun and silencer and aims it at Jessica, just as Magnum has scaled the Royal Hawaiian Hotel walls to reach the sliding glass door of Joan's patio, and lets himself in to save not one of the potential romantic interests in his orbit, but Jessica, his equal, or should I say, his superior. The episode ends with Joan in jail, unfortunately, and Magnum and Jess making a pact that the other one won't get into the same line of work as the other. Jess won't become a PI and Magnum won't become a writer. They high-five and laugh. It's an incredibly sweet moment of mutual respect and admiration, one that marks a point of growth for Thomas Magnum and the end of my Jessica Fletcher episode. Thank you for listening to Window Dressing, American Trash, and National Treasures. I will be back in 2 weeks. 90210, Jenny Garth, and Tori Spelling are the topics of the next couple of episodes. Thank you for listening. I'm Madeline Jane Auble.